Elvis is directed by Baz Luhrmann and stars Austin Butler and Tom Hanks. From his childhood in Mississippi to his rise to stardom in Tennessee and his conquering of Las Vegas, Elvis Presley becomes the first rock and roll star and changes the world with his music. So in terms of excitement for this movie, I was actually sort of mixed. On the one hand, this is a musical biopic, and as the past couple of years have hinted at, whenever we get a musical biopic, we're always promised two awesome things: an awesome lead performance and a great soundtrack. But on the other hand, this movie was directed by Baz Luhrmann, a director I do not like. I don't think I've liked a single one of his movies. I didn't like Moulin Rouge, I hated Romeo plus Juliet, and the closest one that I came to liking was his version of The Great Gatsby. But even then, you're not gonna find The Great Gatsby on this Blu-ray shelf anytime soon. So going into this movie, I knew this was either going to be a love or a hate movie for me. And after walking out, I can honestly say this is the best Baz Luhrmann movie to date. I really liked this film. We all know the best part about this movie easily because I said it earlier. The lead performance of Austin Butler as Elvis Presley is as perfect as you could possibly get. He so encompasses everything that Elvis was. The way he walks, the way he talks, the way he acts, the way he sings most of the songs that he sings. Every single time he was on screen, I was convinced this was not only a great performance, but sometimes I was practically convinced I was watching Elvis. That is one of the best compliments you could possibly give a performer who is acting as someone who already existed, when you forget it's a performance and you just see who they're playing as. Especially when who they're playing as is such a cultural icon. He is so good, I am convinced you could go to Las Vegas, search through every single Elvis impersonator there, and you still wouldn't be able to find a better performance of Elvis than Butler himself. If he is not at the bare minimum nominated for an Oscar for this role, I'm rioting. And needless to say, like I said earlier, the soundtrack in this movie is so good. Not only do you have a ton of classic Elvis songs, but it's also surprisingly mixed in with some more modern songs with a bit of an Elvis twist to them, whether they're Elvis inspired or just covers of Elvis songs. And at first I was sort of iffy on this decision, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized by putting these modern songs into this film, it shows the impact that Elvis had on the music genre in general. And the story is so good. Not only does it obviously introduce a whole bunch of things that not even for me, an Elvis fan, really knew about the King's life, but it also made me really invested in every aspect of his life. No matter how short some points of his life was in the film, I surprisingly got invested because I really got invested in how personal his connections to his family and his friends and just his life and culture in general was. No matter how short of time you get to know a character in this film, not only do they most of the time leave a lasting impression, but if something bad happens to them, you legitimately feel bummed out. This movie is nearly 3 hours long, and I was invested in almost every second of it. But with that said, I do have some problems with the movie. Mainly just two, but they are two big problems. The first problem is one that I knew I was going to hate going in, and I was really hoping that I wasn't going to hate, but Baz Luhrmann's direction. I can't stand it. True, he has a legitimate style to him, but it is a style that I can't help but find so obnoxious. The way that the editing is constantly going back and forth and back and forth and constantly twisting and turning and twisting and turning. Just in the opening 10 minutes of this movie alone, I felt like I was getting nauseous just watching it. And because of that style, most of the scenes in not just this movie, but all of his movies feel more like montages than actual scenes. There is rarely a moment in any one of his movies, let alone this one, where he will just sit there with the camera and let a moment breathe for itself. He always has to be moving constantly, whether it's the camera moving or the editing moving. It's always moving, it's always energetic, but it's the kind of energetic that I can't just get into and I always find ungodly annoying. The first 20 minutes or so of the movie was the worst of it by far, but to be fair, after that, it does get pretty good. But those first 20 minutes, I thought I was going to despise this movie. And the second big problem, and I'm sorry to have to say this, it's Tom Hanks. I'm sorry, but this might be his worst performance in at least a while, if not ever. Whereas Austin Butler practically got transformed into Elvis himself, Hanks always just looks like Tom Hanks doing a performance. The way that he talks is so silly. The way that the makeup makes him look like Humpty Dumpty is ridiculous. It practically takes out anything of emotional impact within a scene that he is in. I feel like they were trying to go with something akin to what Colin Farrell did with his makeup in The Batman. But at the same time, Colin Farrell was practically unrecognizable as the Penguin. Here, you always know it's Tom Hanks. I don't know whether it was Hanks's fault, whether it was Luhrmann's fault, or whether it was the producer's fault, but whoever's fault it was, I feel like someone wanted everyone to know that it was Tom Hanks and no one else. And because of that, it damages both the character and the actor. Because Tom Hanks is always typecast as the good guy, the nice guy, the decent guy. Putting him, so obviously him, face-wise, so obviously him, in a role where he is the antagonist, I could just never buy. I could never get past, and it just damages the film. But with that said, again, those are my only problems with the film. They're two big problems, but they are just two nonetheless. Because overall, I really had a lot of fun with this movie. Austin Butler gives the performance of a lifetime, the soundtrack is awesome, most of the characters are extremely likable, and the story is always investing. True, I could just never get into Luhrmann's style whenever he went all out in this movie, and you can never take Tom Hanks' performance or character seriously, but the rest of this film is so good, some of that can be swept under the rug a bit. But seriously though, Austin Butler's performance cannot be understated. It's to the point where at the very end of the film, when they actually show footage from Elvis's life, I'm sitting in my seat like, wow, that is some good makeup. Wait, that's the actual Elvis. I'm going to give Elvis an A-. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite Elvis song? For me, Can't Help Falling in Love with You is not only one of my all-time favorite songs, but it is one of the only songs that if I listen to it in its entirety, I actually might shed a tear. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.